It's the most bizarre F1 adjacent story in years. Colton Herta is walking away from being one of IndyCar's top and highest paid star drivers to race in F2 with the hopes of persuading Cadillac to give him an F1 seat. And that's the thing, this is being done in hope, not expectation. Cadillac has guaranteed Herta nothing in terms of a future F1 race seat. The rumour Herta could switch to F2 was initially laughed off by many, but it soon became clear Cadillac and Herta are taking this move extremely seriously. Herta is moving to Europe to spend as much time as possible learning from and working with Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez as Cadillac joins the F1 grid in 2026. Herta has been close to joining F1 before, more on that later, but he had convinced himself that his opportunities are gone, until Cadillac F1 CEO Dan Tauris, who's also been Herta's overall boss at the Andretti IndyCar team, offered him the chance to rekindle his dream to make the switch. Both Herta and Tauris appeared on the Ask Off Track podcast hosted by Herta's ex-Andretti teammates James Hinchcliffe and Alexander Rossi, an American ex-F1 driver himself, to discuss the move in more detail, quoted throughout this video. Herta was one of, if not the highest paid drivers in IndyCar, one of its biggest and few American stars, and a nailed-on race winner every year. His sometimes peaky form, and that of the Andretti team, which was also being guilty of lacking consistency in IndyCar, are forgiven by many in IndyCar because of the belief in Herta's prodigious pace, which is what has often helped drive the Herta to F1 narrative over his 7 years in the series. Clearly Herta feels this is the last chance saloon for an F1 career. However, he still made that decision knowing he doesn't have a guaranteed F1 seat. Tauris says that's what impresses him most about Herta, his willingness to be uncomfortable. Herta's various appearances in F1 teams over the last 4 years or so have convinced Tauris of Herta's potential. When Andretti was trying to buy Sauber in 2021, Tauris said it took Herta just 1 hour to be quicker than its F1 race drivers Antonio Giovinazzi and Kimi Raikkonen in the simulator at the time, although it is worth pointing out Tauris did not name the drivers. Tauris reckons that led to some other things to show some real excitement along the way, and so he's built up an actual body of work that not everybody knows about in Formula 1. That body of work is going to be important because Herta comes into this knowing that Bottas and Perez have 2-year deals taking them through 2027. He is currently 24 years old and turns 25 in March, so this is likely his last F1 opportunity, and he's got a lot of work to do to get there. But Herta reckons as a driver you are constantly betting on yourself, and that he believes he is fast enough to make this switch. We haven't seen a young IndyCar driver in their prime move to F2 in a bid to get an F1 seat. It's an unprecedented move. The F1 Junior single-seater ladder has almost become a monopoly in recent years, with even Super Formula no longer seen as an adequate testbed for a young driver. That's why, if the decision was that Cadillac and Herta want to go down the F1 route, doing F2 is the only logical scenario while he spends the rest of his time integrating with the F1 team. He'll also learn new tracks, a negligible advantage with the quality of simulators these days, and get to grips with Pirelli rubber, which will be more of a help, although the tyres don't behave exactly the same as they do in F1. The super license points and the time to integrate into the F1 team are the biggest benefits of this move. It's clear Herta doesn't need to impress Andretti as much as most junior drivers would have to, but given Tauris' comments about Herta needing to earn his chance, surely that means Herta has to acquit himself well in F2. That is not going to be easy. While F2 is a spec chassis formula like IndyCar, IndyCar has far more avenues for development with its damper and wind tunnel allowances. The F2 car has fewer avenues for adjustment. While teams are willing to set IndyCars up differently from driver to driver even within the same team, F2 is much more set. There's an attitude in F2 that the team has developed the car to drive in a certain way because that's fastest, and it's up to the driver to adapt. Let's say Herta goes from his Andretti IndyCar, which put simply has a really secure rear end and tendency to understeer somewhat, to an F2 car performing in the opposite manner. That will be what Herta has to work with for the rest of the season, and he'll have to adapt. That's before you consider the usual peaks and troughs of the teams in F2. Pick the wrong one and it could be slow or not to your style, and you're at the back of the grid. One similar example of the process Herta will go through is Toyota's 2023 Super Formula champion Ritomo Miata. He could only finish 19th in F2 last year. Even his second year at a different team, he is only 14th with 4 rounds to go. This shows how tough F2 is, and if Herta has a similar struggle, will it test Cadillac's resolve in promoting him, or like Ollie Behrman did with Ferrari and Haas in 2024, will Herta do enough in F1 testing to deserve the seat regardless of his F2 results? Even as early as the first part of 2021, Herta was being pointed towards a Formula 1 future by industry insiders and fans, and that ramped up once it was clear that Michael Andretti was trying to spearhead an American driver onto the F1 grid, and that driver would be Colton Herta. However, Andretti's numerous setbacks and butting heads with F1's ownership over the addition of an 11th team meant that Herta was always left waiting. His somewhat rollercoaster IndyCar seasons probably didn't help, as IndyCar's woeful waiting in the FIA super license points mean he has always been lacking in that department. His last big opportunity looks set to come in 2023, when Red Bull via AlphaTauri coveted Herta in a seat that eventually went to Nick de Vries. But ultimately, Red Bull could not persuade the FIA to grant Herta a super license exemption, and that ended his chances. This move is an interesting one because Herta is only 5 points off gaining his super license now, and will only need 6 next year, as he will lose 1 point from his 10th in IndyCar in 2023 because the points are tallied over a 3-year period. Cadillac could have sent Herta to a winter series, like the Formula Regional Oceania Trophy, which Red Bull used to get its likely future F1 driver Arvid Lindblad a license this year. The IndyCar season is finished, and there are still 9 F1 races remaining, meaning Cadillac could have also attempted to strike a deal for Herta to do 5 FP1s with another team to get the license and continue in IndyCar next year while awaiting an F1 seat to open. Herta says that FP1 route was considered, but the reason it was turned down shows why he is making the F2 move. Part of the move is to fully integrate into an F1 team, to learn how it operates and be available to do all of the additional tasks required of potential F1 drivers these days, like running the sim on an F1 weekend to help the team troubleshoot and improve. So while F2 might be the headline for some people, that's just a small element of Herta's move, as he looks to make this opportunity a success. Most drivers have to use F2 to show they are good enough for F1, even if they are affiliated to an F1 team as a junior. But Herta has already convinced Cadillac he has the capability to be an F1 driver, its CEO Tauris has said as much. Now it's about getting him integrated so that when he gets his chance, he is ready to impress. Herta says he'll get time to decompress after a long IndyCar season, where he was comfortably the second best Andretti driver behind Kyle Kirkwood and finished 7th in the points. He reckons he'll be fully integrated into Cadillac's F1 setup after September, but he has admitted a lot of the details are still to be worked out. That's because, incredibly, he only made the final decision to make this switch a few days ago, although the details of the plan had been talked about and in motion for months. Herta says the biggest thing to prioritise now is how can he be best prepared to become an F1 driver and what does that entail. Herta says he's willing to do whatever the team wants him to do to make this a success, because that's the most important thing for him, is that this is a successful move. To make that happen, he's got to secure a super license and do well in a really tough F2 championship, convince the team with his work behind the scenes, impress enough in his time in a car that Bottas or Perez should be moved aside, and secure a race seat, all in the space of the next 2 years. It's a gargantuan task, but Herta and Cadillac have bet on him to succeed. Herta's always likely to find a home back in IndyCar if he wants in the future, but how often do F1 chances come up for IndyCar drivers? When you put it like that, despite the risks, the move is a no-brainer if he wants to fulfill his dream to become America's next F1 driver. It's clear this move has generated a lot of opinion. What do you think? Has Herta and Cadillac made the right decision to put Herta on this new path? Will Herta succeed where others have failed in F2? Can he turn this switch into an actual F1 seat for 2027 or 2028? Let us know in the comments below.